Hey guys, how's it going? Hope you're doing well. My name is Crown, and today I'm going to read you some very interesting stories that I hope that you're gonna love. And now, without further ado, let's go!
I've been working at this small hotel near downtown for about 3 years now. Started right after finishing my business degree. Not exactly what I planned, but the pandemic hit right when I graduated. And this job offered health insurance and decent pay. Plus, the night shift suits me. Fewer people around. And I can study for my master's degree during quiet hours. Most guests are pretty normal. Business travelers who just want their key and directions to their room, or families too tired from driving to do more than a quick check-in. Last week, this elderly pastor came in around 8 p.m. He was in town for some religious ceremony at the local church. The moment he walked in, I could tell he was going to be one of those guests, the kind that think a captive audience means free therapy. I greeted him with the usual welcome and asked how I could help. He mentioned having a reservation and immediately started talking about being here for an ecumenical gathering. When I asked for his name to check the reservation, he interrupted me to ask if I knew what ecumenical meant. I explained that it referred to promoting unity among different Christian churches, but he didn't seem convinced. He demanded I give him the full definition, as if testing me. After I gave him the definition, he started spelling out his name, the most basic name you could imagine, and asked if I knew how to spell it. I assured him I did while pulling up his reservation. That's when he noticed I wasn't wearing a name tag. Before I could explain why, he announced that he knew girls don't wear name tags because of creepy men, but insisted I should still wear one. When he asked for my name, I told him it's a completely normal, common name, but he refused to believe me, declaring that pretty girls always lie about their names when men ask them. For the rest of our interaction, he would use my name but add a comment about how it wasn't my real name. Throughout the check-in process, he kept calling me ma'am at the end of every sentence, then immediately correcting himself saying, well, not ma'am, but you know what I mean. I still have no idea what he meant by that, and I didn't want to ask. Then things got even weirder. He made some corny joke about the weather, and I gave my standard courtesy laugh. That's when he started commenting about how I must laugh at my daddy's jokes like that, and how I must love my daddy very much. I tried staying quiet, hoping he'd drop it. Instead, he launched into a series of increasingly uncomfortable questions about my daddy. He kept asking if I was a daddy's girl, if my daddy took good care of me, and if I ran straight to my daddy for hugs when I got home. My professional smile got tighter and tighter as he went on. Here's the thing. I moved out on my own at 18 for a very good reason. My father won't be telling any jokes for a very long time, considering he's serving multiple life sentences for what he did to me throughout my childhood. I've learned over the years that when people get inappropriately nosy, sometimes the best response is to give them exactly what they're asking for. So I looked him straight in the eye, kept my brightest customer service smile, and cheerfully told him that my father was serving several life sentences in prison for repeatedly assaulting me throughout my childhood. So he wasn't really around to tell jokes anymore. The pastor's face went through about 5 different shades of pale. He stammered out an apology, to which I responded, still smiling, that he shouldn't be sorry because I wasn't. He mumbled something about needing coffee and practically ran away from the front desk. When he returned 15 minutes later, he signed his registration card in complete silence, took his key, and scurried off to his room. I didn't see him again for his entire stay. He even called down for late checkout instead of coming to the desk. I found out later from my manager that he'd written a comment card complaining about how some topics shouldn't be discussed in polite company. Funny how he wasn't concerned about politeness when he was interrogating me about my daddy. The management supported me completely, by the way. My manager just rolled her eyes at his comment card and told me that some people really need to learn to mind their own business. I couldn't agree more. My husband was diagnosed with multiple sclerosis 3 years ago. It progressed fairly quickly, and this year we finally saved up enough money to get him an electric wheelchair. It wasn't easy. We had to budget carefully for months, but seeing him regain some independence made it all worth it. We got it just 2 weeks before Christmas, and he was finally getting comfortable using it. For Christmas this year, we decided to host a family gathering at our house since it would be easier for my husband. We spent a good amount of time making sure everything was accessible for him. We even bought thoughtful gifts for everyone, including my sister-in-law's 3 kids. We got the oldest one the latest gaming console controller he wanted. The middle child got a complete art set with professional colored pencils. She loves drawing. And the youngest got a collection of educational science kits. Everything was going fine until it was time to open presents. My sister-in-law, Karen, was opening the gifts on behalf of her kids who were playing in another room. When she opened the controller, she looked at it with disgust and demanded to know if that was all we got for her son. I explained that it was the exact model he had mentioned wanting, but she wasn't satisfied. She complained that we should have bought the whole gaming system even though her son already owned one. When she opened the art set, she scoffed and criticized our choice of professional colored pencils, arguing that her 11-year-old daughter wasn't a professional artist. My husband tried to explain that her daughter had expressed interest in taking art more seriously, but Karen cut him off before he could finish. The science kit was the final straw. She threw all the presents aside and started comparing the cost of the gifts to my husband's wheelchair. I defended our choices, pointing out that these were quality gifts that her kids had specifically asked for. She called me ridiculous, and when I told her she was the one being ridiculous, she got even more worked up. She started ranting about how we could spend thousands on the wheelchair but couldn't buy decent presents for her kids. My husband attempted to explain that the wheelchair was a medical necessity, not a luxury, but he couldn't even finish his sentence before all hell broke loose. Karen charged at him like a raging bull. Before anyone could react, she shoved him hard, causing him to fall out of the wheelchair. The wheelchair flipped over, and I rushed to my husband's side. But Karen wasn't done. She grabbed a small end table and started smashing the overturned wheelchair with it. I announced that I was calling the police, but Karen just kept hitting the wheelchair, screaming that we cared more about the stupid chair than family anyway. My brother had to physically restrain her, while my sister blocked the door, telling Karen she wasn't going anywhere until the police arrived. Karen tried to push past, yelling that we were the ones who started it with our insulting gifts. The kids came running in because of all the commotion. They started crying when they saw the chaos, their mother being restrained, my husband on the floor, and their presents scattered everywhere. Karen showed zero remorse. She kept screaming about how we deserved it for disrespecting her family. The police arrived within minutes. After taking statements from everyone and seeing the damage, they arrested Karen for assault and destruction of property. My husband wasn't seriously injured, thankfully, but the wheelchair was severely damaged. We pressed charges and Karen tried to play the victim in court, claiming she had an emotional breakdown due to family stress. The judge wasn't buying it. She was ordered to pay full restitution for the wheelchair, but she claimed she couldn't afford it. That's when the judge ordered her to sell her luxury SUV to cover the damages. The aftermath was actually quite satisfying. She had to downgrade to a basic used car, which was especially humbling since she always bragged about her vehicle. Her kids got to keep their presents, which they actually loved, by the way, and they now spend Christmas with their father instead. The rest of the family cut ties with her too, not just us, after seeing her true colors. The silver lining, we got an even better wheelchair through the restitution money, and our family gatherings are much more peaceful now. Karen's kids visit us occasionally with their father, and it turns out they're much happier without their mother's constant drama. The oldest one actually traded in the controller we got him to help pay for a birthday gift for my husband, a specialized cup holder for his new wheelchair. The middle child drew us a beautiful family portrait that now hangs in our living room, and the youngest one is thriving in science class, partly thanks to those cheap science kits we gave him. As for Karen, her life took quite a turn. After selling her luxury SUV, she tried to sue her workplace for emotional distress when they wouldn't give her time off to process the trauma of the Christmas incident. She lost that case too and eventually had to move to a smaller apartment because she couldn't afford her house payments anymore. Sometimes I hear she still complains about how we ruined her life over just a wheelchair, but honestly, that just makes me smile. She even tried to crash my husband's birthday party 6 months later, showing up uninvited with a fake apology and demands to be let back into the family. But security escorted her out before she could cause another scene. Everyone pitched in to help modify our house to make it more accessible for my husband, and our holiday gatherings are now filled with genuine love and laughter instead of walking on eggshells around Karen's demands. The worst 5 years of my life were spent working at a medical device company that nearly drove me to the edge. I started as a regular employee but somehow ended up supervising a shift I wasn't even assigned to, without the pay bump to match. When I finally escaped that hellhole, I got a $10 per hour raise at my new job with way less responsibility. Life was looking up until the pandemic hit. Working in the medical industry, I knew layoffs were coming. Sure enough, I got my pink slip. What followed was the most chaotic year of my life. I tried getting back on my feet through a staffing agency, but they got caught padding my resume. The next agency wasn't any better. They promised me administrative work, matching my ongoing degree, but instead sent me right back to my old company. They'd become the agency's biggest client, being a respiratory device manufacturer during a pandemic and all. Talk about cosmic jokes. Being broke and desperate, I took the job. Those 4 weeks felt like 4 years. The place had transformed into a complete nightmare. Management had cooked up this brilliant bonus scheme. Work 20+ hours overtime weekly between Thanksgiving and New Year's for a $2,000 bonus. People were so desperate they'd drive through literal blizzards to get to work. Of course, management found every possible loophole to avoid paying those bonuses. When my supervisor brought up the bonus email, I pointed out how extreme the conditions seemed. They just brushed it off, claiming they were being more than generous. When I mentioned my concerns about the winter storms, they just lectured me about how they needed dedicated people and that if I wanted the bonus, I'd have to make it work. Their true colors really showed when my car broke down on the way to work. I called to explain that my throwout bearing had died and that I was stranded but could get there in about 2 hours. The manager immediately threatened my job, saying if I didn't show up, I shouldn't bother coming back at all. When I repeated that I would be there in 2 hours, they demanded I stay late to make up for it. I refused, reminding them I was already making the effort to come in despite my car breaking down. They just scoffed and threatened to discuss it with my agency. I finally landed a permanent position at another medical device company and got to tell both the agency and my old employer where to stick it. But the real story starts with what we called the contest. Our small state has this business magazine that runs a best company to work for competition. My old company had actually won it before I first left, and now they were eligible to compete again. These corporate idiots were so disconnected from reality, they thought they'd win again. The contest worked by having employees fill out an online survey. Through some former co-workers still working there, we had a Discord group for trauma bonding. We got our hands on the survey link. Then someone made an incredible discovery and messaged the group to tell us that the survey worked in incognito mode, meaning we could take it unlimited times. We all got excited and started organizing. I checked if everyone still had their horror stories documented, and my former co-workers confirmed they had screenshots and everything ready. We all agreed it was time to show them what their best company really looked like. We launched our attack, submitting honest but scathing reviews. In my comments, I detailed the abuse, including how my supervisor had used my recently deceased mother's memory to guilt-trip me in an email. We kept filling out surveys until our inside source confirmed they'd reached 90% participation. The company had already started celebrating, stocking champagne in break room fridges, and plastering their social media with premature victory posts. Then the results came in. Our inside source quickly messaged us about the chaos unfolding in management. When asked for details, they described how the champagne had disappeared. Social media was being scrubbed, and management had issued a gag order on mentioning the contest. The magazine's representatives were so concerned by the survey results that they conducted a follow-up investigation with the company. The aftermath was beautiful. Their reputation tanked so hard they eventually had to delist from the stock exchange. They're barely staying afloat with venture capital support. I'm a child psychologist specializing in trauma and behavioral issues. After spending 5 years working in an underfunded public school system, I've seen my fair share of difficult situations, but nothing prepared me for this absurd encounter on social media. It started during my lunch break at the clinic. I was scrolling through Instagram, taking a mental breather between sessions, when I came across this video of a fellow psychologist responding to a concerning parent situation. The parent was describing how their child had developed a dangerous habit of throwing rocks at strangers, resulting in several injuries. They explained their attempt at gentle parenting and reasoning with the child, which proved ineffective. Eventually, they resorted to physical discipline, a slap, which finally stopped the behavior. The responding psychologist suggested leading the child to a rock-free area and explaining that harming others is wrong. As someone who's dealt with violent behavioral issues in children, I know firsthand that simply removing access to one type of weapon doesn't address the underlying problem. That's when I noticed the comment section, and one particular comment made my blood boil. In the comment, someone identified themselves as both an education student and a parent. They went on to quote their textbooks, claiming that any form of bodily coercion against someone's will was mistreatment. They argued that forcibly leading a child away or taking rocks from their hands would be abuse that would result in trauma and frustration. I responded by pointing out the absurdity of their logic, asking if we should risk bodily harm or permanent injury just to avoid traumatizing a child by taking away their means of hurting others. I compared it to refusing to disarm violent criminals out of fear of frustrating them. The student then messaged me privately dismissing my opinion because I didn't have children of my own. I fired back by explaining my years of experience working with troubled children in the public school system. I described witnessing kids who were never told no develop into teenagers who couldn't handle basic authority, counseling parents who feared setting boundaries, and treating children who were injured by other kids whose parents refused to correct dangerous behavior. The student accused me of promoting violence against children and tried to cite their research. I countered by mentioning my own research experience and publications in child psychology, emphasizing the crucial difference between abuse and appropriate discipline. I stressed the necessity of immediate intervention when a child is actively harming others. Getting more agitated, the student claimed I was triggered in acting unprofessionally. They threatened to report me to the psychology board for promoting child abuse. I welcomed their threat, suggesting they try explaining to the board how preventing children from assaulting others constitutes abuse. A week later, I received a notification that someone had indeed filed a complaint against my license. I forwarded the entire exchange to the board, along with my credentials and research papers on appropriate disciplinary interventions in cases of violent behavior. The board's response was satisfyingly brief, simply stating that the complaint was dismissed and recommending the complainant review basic child safety protocols. I later learned that the student had been called in for a review of their educational program, as their understanding of child psychology and professional ethics was deemed concerning. In the following months, my original comment gained traction in professional circles, leading to some productive discussions about the balance between gentle parenting and necessary intervention. The incident reinforced what I've always known. While gentle parenting has its place, it should never come at the cost of other people's safety. And now we have reached the end of today's stories. Thank you for watching, and see you next time.